almost most auspicious day. You can see the sun behind me. We're here on the day before the winter solstice, and here is Karnak Temple Complex. Let me just turn this camera around so you can see what I'm seeing. We're at the Karnak Temple Complex, the largest temple complex in Egypt, and arguably what would have been the largest temple complex in the whole world, next to Angkor Wat. And you can see we're back here at the Akhmenu. So this is the rest of Karnak over here. You see Hatshepsut's obelisk there, and the winter solstice alignment would rise up through. It's already moved now. The sun has shifted. Let's take you through here and show you what we're looking at. Symbolically, from an esoteric perspective, this is what French hermeticist and alchemist R.A. Schwal de Lubitsch would refer to as the primordial scission. It is undifferentiated consciousness becoming aware of itself. It's the same principle as personified by Atum in Egyptian religion, essentially creation, becoming aware. Here at Karnak Temple Complex, which is in a way consecrated to the principle of organic creation. The geometries, the proportion, the geometry. And by the way, actually, Karnak is designed, it's encoded with the Fibonacci sequence, which we find all throughout nature. So it's fitting that you have this temple complex that is esoterically consecrated to the principle of organic creation, and within it you have the Fibonacci sequence. There's Hatshepsut, back there is Hatshepsut's shrine, Hatshepsut's obelisk, and that aligns all the way across the Nile River to the west bank where I live, and up to Hatshepsut's temple, Djeser Djeseru, which is the ancient Egyptian name for the most sacred of sacreds, her temple, Deir el Bahari. And there's an alignment there that goes up the walkway, which would have been an avenue of sphinxes. Most of the sphinxes are missing now. There's only two sphinxes. There used to be one, and this year they added a second one that they restored. But there used to be hundreds of sphinxes lining her processional walkway. And so the alignment that takes place really tomorrow on the winter solstice, but today we still get we can observe a similar phenomena with far less people here. There'll be more people observing tomorrow, but the sun rises right back there. You can see it's back there now, in alignment with the chapel, the obelisk, all the way across to the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum of her temple. And then her temple is actually constructed into the ridge. It blends in really nicely with the horizontal backdrop, organically. But even behind her temple on the west bank is the valley. Behind is a mountain, and behind the mountain is the Valley of the Kings, and that's where we find her burial, which would have also been a line thought to have been dug under going toward the temple. But you have where her burial was, her tomb basically, to the temple, lined up to the obelisk, to the shrine here. Absolutely amazing. And to imagine this was all done not by a man but a woman. This was Hatshepsut, female pharaoh, she who adorned the headdress and the beard, representing a transgression from typical ancient Egyptian protocol where she became a female pharaoh. And so she is responsible for this alignment. Now there's another, I think a lot of people come here and none the wiser, not even realizing that. Those who realize the archaeoastronomy, that there is this alignment, a lot of people do know about the alignment here, but they don't realize it was the design of a woman, actually, a female. We also have the other alignment at Abu Simbel. And at Abu Simbel, though, the temple was moved, again, in a worldwide effort by UNESCO, stone by stone, to preserve it from the rising floodwater. So it doesn't have the same magic, but it still has the alignment there as well that takes place. But that's 19th dynasty Ramses, whereas this is 18th dynasty Hatshepsut. And so when we talk about these ancient astronomers and we pay homage, we have to realize it was actually a woman. It was Hatshepsut. And this is the Akhmenu, or the festival hall of Tutmosis. What you're looking at, esotericists will appreciate this. This is really one of the first mystery schools here at Egypt. And this is where, well, the Egyptologists say when Tutmosis would come back from his military campaigns after coming back from his military campaigns, he wanted to remember them. So inside you have these unusual, what almost look like tent poles for columns. Very unusual feature, the way they're designed, but we know there's actually a hidden esoteric symbolism here. I'm not going to cover it right now. I go into more depth during my tours, but it represents creation out of the void, and you see it by looking at the negative space. I'll leave it at that. Anyway, this was one of the first mystery schools, the Akmanu. This is where, at the time, there were all these various sects, different, you know, loosely bound organizations, esoteric, mystical sects, and it was Tutmosis and his co-regent Hatshepsut and their viziers and priests that brought them all together under a single order, which is essentially at the foundation of the sacred history, the lineage of the Rosicrucian order, Amorc, the ancient mystical order Rosicrucis, which is the modern day Rosicrucians, and their sacred history, their connection to ancient Egypt goes all the way back to Tutmosis and Hatshepsut and Akhenaten and the mystery schools. And so this is where, again, the mystery schools are organized into a single order, which is at the roots of the sacred history of the Rosicrucians. Rosicrucians, a prominent, you know, organization of mystics that for centuries have preserved ancient, universal, immutable laws, cosmic principles that were evident in the sacred art and architecture of the ancients. The Rosicrucian tradition prominently, you know, features prominently in the Western esoteric tradition. Essentially, it is the Western esoteric tradition. Get from that Hermeticism and Gnosticism and I mean, all of these things come before. The title Rosicrucian comes later, but the principles remain the same. Look at this here. Absolutely amazing. We're on the backside now. The Holy of Holies in there is where the shrine where they would have kept the statue that would have been brought down the Avenue of the Sphinxes as part of the Opet Festival, the processional way, and over to Luxor. Luxor Temple, the Temple of Man, is intricately connected to Karnak, the Temple of Creation. So from an esoteric perspective, this is the Temple of Organic Creation, and it is intricately linked by the Avenue of the Sphinxes, which in ancient Egypt would have been referred to as Wat Neter, which is Wat is road or path in ancient Egyptian, and Neter, really Neter rather than Neter, because the T is a ch sound. So if we use standard Egyptological conventions, so Wat Neter means road or path of the gods. Neter means gods, although best viewed not so much as a god, but a principle or aspect of nature and cosmology. That's what the gods were. They were personifications, a way of taking an image and a likeness and putting it to a concept, a cosmological or natural concept, concepts in nature and the cosmos. This is the some of the older parts of Karnak back here, and even further back. Karnak was originally consecrated to Montu, and then around the time that Aries came into vogue, for those that study, you know, the astronomy of it all and astrology, when Aries came in the precessional cycle, that's around the time that things transition to Amun becoming the main deity. Amun rises to prominence over Montu here in Luxor. Luxor, Arabic name for fortified palaces. This was originally in antiquity known as Thebes, and Thebes is really just the Greek word for what we call modern day Luxor. However, ancient Egyptian word would have been Was. This was the land of Was, ancient Was back in the day. And again, we're here just one day before the winter solstice, this auspicious day, and there's far less people here. So this is a pro traveler tip. If you want to come see pretty much the same phenomena, same feature, you could come today and witness it. So we're now going to walk through the Akmanu. I do apologize for this shaky cam on this live. I just wanted to go live and share the moment with you guys. I didn't plan on doing this, and I had to get up real early in the morning to be here, so I scrambled and didn't grab my gimbal. So I'm holding everything by hand. There you can see the sun above the gate. But I did want to share this with you. Look, you can see the remains of a statue, some feet right there. This has probably been cut down and usurped maybe by the Romans, who were known to usurp and really actually cut down a lot of the stones and reuse the stone, repurpose the stone. We're now inside or entering what's known as the Stone Botanical Garden. This is where when Tutmosis came back from his military campaigns, they say he wanted to remember all of the goods, or maybe take an inventory of the goods. Here we have some of the older vegetation in the east, which makes sense because everything comes from the east, like the knowledge and enlightenment. We look to the east. And then over here, we actually find, esoterically speaking, the principle of virgin birth, the ability to evolve within a single lifetime. So you see over here, you have in the west, where we go to west, which is, so, you know, the east over here, the east is unrealized potential. And then you go over here to the west, it's that unrealized potential made manifest. It represents completion. It's a transformation that takes place because the sun, see, the ancient Egyptians had a deeply profound and spiritual way of looking at the sunrise. The sun rises in the east along the horizon, Horus, and it goes to set in the west. It goes to die in the west, but it doesn't really die. It goes under the earth. It goes through a transformational, period. So you have this unrealized potential made manifest going through the journey where it rests before going through the underworld again. A similar concept throughout many different traditions, just looked at in different ways. But this is, you have the vegetation and virgin birth, right? This happens in nature. So it isn't that this is giving life to its offspring. This is realizing the next. This is this looking back at a previous version of itself. This is what humans should, work to achieve in a single lifetime. Evolution of humanity. This is what is at the core of many spiritual traditions. This is also represented or personified by Horus. Horus is the return to source. We have to go through the different cycles to reach a new octave, to get to the next level, the Anyextee level. And then see it's represented here. So it makes sense that this is in the west, because west is completion, transformation. You've started back here in the east and you went through a complete cycle. Even a spiritual cycle. We can go through all different cycles: spiritual, physical, emotional, astral. And let's take a look at some of the stonework over here. Massive blocks. There's the sun. And so you would also see the sun illuminating Hatshepsut's temple today. If we were on the west bank of Luxor, where I live, and we looked at the Holy of Holies, Hatshepsut's temple would be receiving the solar rays. If you're interested in joining me here in Egypt this March, I'll be returning for the Ancient Technology and Esoteric Symbolism Tour of Egypt, which will be co-hosted by Johanna James from the Funny Old World YouTube channel. He says we got smoking guns. But yeah, you can join Johanna James and I. And on this, day before a most auspicious day, I'd like to make a very special announcement. I haven't announced this yet, but I'll be leading. You guys are going to get the exclusive right now because you're tuned into the live. Ready for this? Drum roll, please. I'll be leading another tour in September, but this tour is going to be co-hosted by a very special guest. This will be his first ever tour of Egypt. I'm extending an invitation to you to join this groundbreaking event. This is unprecedented because Adept Initiates, myself, will be joined by ancient architects Matt Simpson. Me, and Matt Simpson, Adept Expeditions, Ancient Architects in Egypt this September for the Ancient Architecture and Esoteric Symbolism Tour. This is going to be Ancient Architects' first community adventure with Adept Expeditions here in Egypt. Both Matt Simpson and I will be your hosts, and we look forward to joining you on what promises to be an epic adventure. So, 2 options for Egypt this year. Me and Johanna James in March, and me and Matt Simpson in September. And we are also going to see Karahan Tepe, Göbekli Tepe, Derinkuyu, Sagmata, and so much more on the Ancient Technology and Esoteric Symbolism Tour of Turkey. So if you'd like to join us, Johanna James and I will be in Turkey in October. And then in November, we have the Mysteries of the Maya Tour. Myself and Karina Eats Kawat in the Yucatan will be once again doing our community adventure, exploring the mysteries of the Maya. Always an amazing time, actually one of my favorite tours. Economically speaking, the most affordable. Excuse me, and nothing short of amazing. Anyway, we're back here in the back of Karnak, showing you some stuff you typically don't see. Look at the detail and a very deep, incise relief work of Ramses. Very nice detail. This is the Ankh, and then you have Sa-Ra, or Sa-Re, but Sa-Ra, which means son of the sun, son of the illumined, son of the light. Could be interpreted as that way, but standard Egyptology says it's son of, so Sa-Ra, which is one of the king's royal titles. You can see the name there, and a symbol for life, the Ankh. Morning. Blue Dog says he always questions bad graffiti. Huh. What's the bad graffiti, Blue Dog? These hieroglyphs, which are sacred glyphs, which in ancient Egyptian were referred to as the Medu Neter, which is the sacred divine language, which comes from Thoth, is recognized in the esoteric tradition, but in Egypt known as, really it's the principle of Jehuti or Tahuti, depending on what school of pronunciation you want to subscribe to, but Jehuti is he who brought the Medu Neter, the sacred language, to the people. But of course, this is a literal way of understanding it. Really, it's an esoteric principle. But if you don't have the appropriate context, it's sort of like Atlantis. You don't understand it, and then you take it at the surface value. You take it exoterically rather than esoterically. And we know that the ancient Egyptians, like most civilizations, observe these esoteric principles, which seem to get often lost in our own civilization. Karina,
yes.
Here it is.
Yeah,
I forgot about this
that's
one.
what I was telling you. Look at the look at the position of the sun. The position of the sun would be hitting this gate and the statue directly at the same time. Now it's moved a little bit to our right, but you can still see the sun is still hitting the statue. But at the point where the sun actually came up and aligned here, it would actually be hitting the statue directly, perfectly, without any other light surrounding it, which is make it magical. I found this 30 minutes later by myself. I told you I knew that it was back here because I remembered. I'm like, I seeing these statues back here.
Yeah, I took a picture back here with my very first trip here with John Anthony West. I have a picture sitting up there, yeah. I think it was Russ from the Enneagram Institute that took it. Yeah, yep. So this would be imbued by the sun, the solar principle. Absolutely amazing. So it's moved just a little bit now, and of course it's going to be off anyway. Did you get it? You can still see the sun casting its rays on it a little bit.
Yeah, it's still there, but like in the morning, there would be no light anywhere else, and just the twilight of the sun's first rays on this, with it coming up in the winter solstice. So that's like a spectacle in it to see. So tomorrow, I don't know what I want to see. If I want to come back here and see the sun actually come up and hit this statue, or go to Hatshepsut and see that, since I already saw the solstice technically here at Karnak today.
What's it like for you as a woman observing this phenomena that was intended or designed by a female pharaoh? What do you make of all of that?
I don't know. I think it's. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the right word to put it besides magnificent. I think astonishing, groundbreaking. If I were to say that.
Yeah, well, it was definitely groundbreaking because, like we said, you know, they also had the alignment at Abu Simbel, which a lot of people know about, but that's 19th Dynasty Ramses. This is 18th Dynasty.
Yeah, and all the papers say that supposedly the temple was already aligned to a winter solstice. It already had a winter solstice alignment, but I mean, I haven't seen or read of any other alignments besides the ones that Hatshepsut. You know, the actual the way that it was built on that axis of east-west, that's something different. But the actual winter solstice alignment was with Hatshepsut aligning into the gate and to her statue, and then aligning into her other temple. So I mean, you know, it's beyond words, and what the other pharaohs here were able to do, even though Tutmosis tried to kind of usurp her later on by building the obelisk and aligning it to the same alignment which she did, which is kind of like trying to obscure.
Well, that's not usurping her. He's just adding. That's not.
He put it right in front of the statue, so it wouldn't be seen. Obviously, it has already been taken away, so it was eclipsing the statue, and the sun wasn't hitting the statue any longer. It was actually just hitting his obelisk. So in a way, he did usurp her.
That's not usurping, though. He's just adding to the. Because, you know, if you look at it from the Rosicrucian perspective, that's the Egyptology. If you look at it.
Yeah, but it's taken away because it's like, if you look at it, you know, from a material perspective, it did take away her shine, because the sun was no longer shining on her on the statue that she built for herself. It was shining on his obelisk. So.
And the sun is shining today.
If we want to be technical.
Look at these massive keyhole cuts here. It's got to be about 2.5, 2.25 feet, 2 feet. So thank you for joining us today, everyone. We will be back tomorrow for the official winter solstice alignment. You can see the sun's shifted now just a little bit. If you're with us earlier, you can see it. Karnak is so vast. You could spend an entire day here and not see it all. That's how big Karnak is. There's no way to see it all in a single day. I mean, you could dash around the site, but to really have significant time to see all the, you could see the salient features, the most important stuff, but if you're into all of the other interesting, more obscure stuff, you definitely need more time. No words, says Smile. You're right, absolutely amazing. It's nice sometimes to just stand here in silence and reverence and observe. They all have the signature. Prototype for angels, and look, this one's upside down. So that means this block is upside down. Perhaps from reconstruction. Seems like every block has the signature. Here's one here. There's another one there. Here's a bigger one here. A lot of non-uniformity in the size. Definitely a later addition. Close up of one of the mud brick walls. Some of the key cuts. I gotta put the phone down for a minute to tie my sneaker here. And if you're just joining us, as the title suggests, we're at Karnak. In the back here, just over there, is the Sacred Lake. Over 30,000 priests occupied Karnak back in the day. The really prototype early, well, there was baptism in many traditions, but early version of baptism would have took place here, the Wa'eb priesthood. The Wa'eb, well, it was the Amun priesthood, but Wa'eb priests, it was the degree of initiation for the priests that would be responsible for the purification rituals. They would have to cleanse themselves and the temple, cleanse themselves before entering the temple, because everything outside the temple was part of the profane world, and everything within the temple was considered sacred or more sacred. and the most sacred space is where the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctuary would be built, and the temple it'd be like a seed and it would grow out from that. And again, we talk about this being a living stone temple. It's all living organically, consecrated to organic creation with the Fibonacci sequence, encoded Fibonacci sequence when you take the sum of the previous two numbers. So like 1 and 1 equal, 3, and then you basically you keep adding those up, and this is the natural sequence that you have all throughout nature. You see it everywhere in nature, and so it's the same encoded into the stone architecture here, giving it that organic principle, underlying principle, growing out organically and left unfinished, just like nature. In the distance over there, back that way, Temple of Ptah, where inside we have Our Lady Sekhmet, which is my most favorite feature here at Karnak, as I've had deeply profound experiences there and enjoy bringing people there year after year as part of my esoteric Egypt tours. Here we have Amun. How about everyone understood the secrets? Well, there's actually good reason for secrecy, and we know in ancient times that, a lot of the plans weren't written down or recorded. It was all done in secret. And we know there are different degrees. This is Amun with a double plume headdress. In his right hand, Amun, the main deity here at Luxor, he holds the Ankh. Left hand, Was. Like-minded people, says Blue Dog. Well, they weren't all like-minded. I mean, we can't speak on behalf of the minds of the Egyptians because we're not in the minds, but what we know about them, can't really speak for no one's personal experience, but what we do know about them is that they did have different degrees of knowledge and understanding in educational systems, like a scribe. It was an honor to become a scribe. You would have to be initiated into scribehood in the school of scribes that studied at what were called houses of life. These were mystery schools, centers of study where initiates that would have to go through different initiations, different ordeals to prove their commitment in their discipline to the art or craft or skill or philosophy or school of thought that they're, studying. And so the scribes, there were different degrees of scribes and priests and different levels of knowledge. And just like the pharaoh itself, the pharaoh was a prototype for what all humanity would strive to become. The pharaoh was essentially a shaman. We don't really use that word, traditionally in Egyptology, but really, if you consider the pharaoh is an intermediary between the unseen world and the seen world. In other words, the immaterial and the material dimensions. The pharaoh would be able to transition between the two and connect with the divine spiritual world. For the ancient Egyptians, they didn't view, they viewed everything as one giant act of creation. And the world was fused with all these spiritual energies that we call Neteru, the Netchers, the divine cosmological principles, or what we say today as the gods. And so this act of creation is imbued with all these living energies, which are part of the unseen world. And so the pharaoh would be able to connect as an intermediary with the unseen world and bring back knowledge. And the pharaoh, also a very complex system, because the ancient Egyptians are 9 aspects of the soul, and one of those aspects would be the Ka. And then the pharaoh would have a royal Ka, which would stay within the family, so to speak. It's sort of like esoteric orders that keep a certain current alive through ritual and conferring initiations. And so not everyone had the same base of knowledge and understanding. But, you know, there was one religion for the common people. There was also another, the priests had their own inner priest religion. They would practice inside the Ipet, which is the ancient Egyptian name for the Luxor temple, which we refer to, when I say we, proponents of the symbolist school refer to as the Luxor temple of man, where here it's consecrated to creation, there it's consecrated to man, and is the creation into man. It explains our whole cosmology, from creation to, you know, humanity, to our role in the greater cosmological scheme of things. So this here, I explain this in more detail in my forthcoming esoteric symbolist guidebook to the Luxor Temple of Man. Here is the sacred lake. Blue Dog is asking, could it be much older? You know, there's some theories. Everybody always wants to say everything is much older. Karnak does go back, we know, at least to the Middle Kingdom. The oldest extent goes to the Middle Kingdom, but it's quite possible that it was even built on Old Kingdom sites. But when you say go back, if we're talking all the way back to the end of the last ice age in the Younger Dryas, as some people posit, I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's any good evidence here at the Karnak temple complex to suggest that any of the structures here today go all the way back to the Younger Dryas. I think that is a bit of a stretch. And when you analyze the temple and you look at the appropriate context, you know, that's why a lot of alternatives like to throw out Egyptology. But the reality is, the context is there in Egyptology. These are doctors who've studied, you know, to get their PhDs. It's not just a big joke. These people have literally spent years in various texts looking at all the context, studying this stuff. So it doesn't always translate to the general public or the layman, but there's ways that it percolates down and becomes accessible for tour guides to repeat and echo some of the basic concepts. But when you dig deep into the record, you know, Egyptologists actually have a lot of stuff figured out. People treat Egyptologists and Egyptology, especially in alternative circles, like, you know, they don't get it. But actually, I find a lot more value in the academic text than I do in the vast majority of alternative work. Not to say there isn't value there too, because I can see value and flaw on both sides. But let's not throw the baby out into the sacred lake, the baby with the bathwater, or the sacred lake water. We wouldn't want, here we have the principle of as above, so below, reflected in the water. I mean, that's really how you could sum up the Luxor temple, the Hermetic adage, as above, so below. It's all represented, the grand cosmological scheme, the cosmos. This is an esoteric concept, that man, know thyself. You know, it's a Delphic aphorism, know thyself and you'll know the universe. You could go within and you're a microcosm of the macrocosm. This was understood by the ancient Egyptians, at least by the initiated class. Good morning. So coming to you now from the sacred lake here at Karnak on the day before the winter solstice. We were the first ones here today at Karnak, and we watched the rising sun, and it was absolutely spectacular. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this live. I'm about to sign off and go find my wife and hang out here at Karnak for a bit. Thank you for joining us. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section. I'll try to get to them later. And if you want to join me in Egypt this March for the Ancient Technology and Esoteric Symbolism Tour with Johanna James, or this September for the Ancient Architecture and Esoteric Symbolism Tour with Matt Simpson and Ancient Architects, or if you want to join me and Johanna in Turkey for the Ancient Technology and Esoteric Symbolism Tour of Turkey, or if you want to join me and Karina Eat Squat in the Yucatan for the Mysteries of the Maya tour in November. You can find all of the tours that we make available at adeptexpeditions.com. This is Anyextee signing out. Oh, and by the way, if you do appreciate what I'm doing, you know, it always helps to send love and support to the Patreon account. Patreon is really the best way to support my work, and I feel like I offer I'm already offering value and you know, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be here to film this stuff for you guys and giving you all this content. But also, if you become a patron at Patreon, I have a real, you know, a really lot of cool benefits in there for patron supporters. So please do consider supporting at Patreon. Anyway, it's Anyextee signing out. Thanks for joining us, everyone. See you guys in the next one.